Trout Routes combine stream maps and river data to help you find fishing access faster. Be confident on the water with fishing access points, real-time stream gauges, and public access, now brought to you by Onyx Maps. Whether you're looking for blue lines, gold medal rivers, or something new in your backyard, Trout Routes has the data to get you on the water fast. Destination Angler podcast listeners can try 1 month of Trout Routes Pro for free by clicking on the link in the episode description. Do what I do and put more access in your hands and explore the water you love with Trout Routes today. This week on the Destination Angler.
Don't be afraid to change, right? If you're not feeling dialed, you don't want to get stuck every drift. You don't want to get hung up every drift. And don't be afraid to influence your flies once they're in the water, right? Lift them up over a rock, drop it back down, put your rod angle upstream a little bit so those flies can come in at a steeper angle. Don't be afraid to move your flies in the water because, currents move bugs around all the time.
And that was Team USA World Champion Tess Weigand with some killer tips for Penns Creek. Hey, if you like the show, please share it with a buddy. Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haigh. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by Got Fishing, crafting world-class fly fishing adventures specially designed to your level of experience and budget, by High and Dry Fishing, where science and performance meet, and by Trout Routes. Be first to know about new episodes when you sign up for my newsletter on the Destination Angler Podcast website. Coming up on the Destination Angler, I speak with fly fishing guide and award-winning artist Bob White, who joins author Steve Ramirez for a guided tour of 2 fly fishing paradises, Alaska and Argentina. Then we head to another fly fishing paradise, New Zealand, with legendary guide Tony Entwistle, who explains what's changed and what hasn't over his 40 years of guiding there. Be sure to backcast to catch the last episode, Kicking Butt on Penns Creek Part 1 with Tess, and also as a bonus, I did an episode on public lands with Trout Unlimited CEO Chris Wood. Chris explains what's happening with the efforts to sell off or weaken protections for our public lands, why it matters, and what we as anglers can do about it. Drop me a line and let me know what you think of the show. And today our destination is a legendary Penns Creek in central Pennsylvania Part 2 with Team USA World Champion Angler and Guide Tess Weigand. Tess unleashes a flood of hard-won tips from years of guiding and competing to help you crack the code on one of the most technical trout streams in the East. We dive into the chaos of the green drake hatch, Tess's go-to fly patterns, how to handle the crowds, read tricky currents, and stay calm when everything is hatching at once. This one is a masterclass in patience, stealth, and observation, with lessons stretching from Montana to Norway. Stick around to the end when Tess shares a moving story about her gold medal moment with Team USA in Idaho and what it really meant to her. I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did making it. Tess is just simply amazing. Here she is as we pick up with Part 2. How big's a green drake?
Yeah, so I typically fish as a size 10 would be small,
A
right?
10,
Like 10
okay.
and 8, yeah.
Okay, what's your favorite pattern?
So I've got a couple. One, an emerger pattern with a trailing shuck.
Okay.
And again, I can share this
Would
with
you?
you. Yeah. And so remember how I was talking about long leaders and I was harping on that forever? This is the exception, okay? Because these big bugs, especially ones with big hackles and stuff, will twist your leader like crazy. And these fish aren't as leader shy when the spinner fall is happening. So, but fishing the emergence of green drakes is really a ton of fun too. So an emerger I love a clink hammer, and this is true of pretty much all emergers that I fish. I love a clink hammer style. I love a trailing shuck, anything that breaks the surface of the water. It changes the perspective of what the trout see. They really key in on that, above and below water.
Do they? Interesting.
Yeah.
Tell us what a clink hammer, because there's some people might not have heard of that.
Sure. It's just I'm sitting at my tying desk, but have all my tying stuff is in my truck. Otherwise I'd pull it out here and show you, but it's, so essentially it's a hook that where a vast majority of it is kind of curved below, to sit below the surface of the water. So it's more of a curved shank that you can, have some foam or parachute. Yeah. And so it just kind of sits under the surface of the water with, it is something great to tie a trailing shuck off of.
And a trailing shuck, what does that look like on a fly? A trailing shuck?
Yeah. So it's just, you can use all sorts of different materials for it, but
like a sparkle done type thing.
Yeah, so I've got some right here. Actually, one of my favorites that I actually like to use. This is just like it's a thread, but this may be really hard to see. But if you double it up, it's a little bit sparkly, and so if you just kind of double it all up on itself, so it kind of just sits below, and you get it wet, it just breaks the surface just like that. Yeah, and you can use anything from poly yarn, all sorts. I mean, gosh, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And so that is essentially, when these insects are hatching from their nymph stage, they're shedding that exoskeleton as they make their way through the water column. And so that wing case starts to break out of that exoskeleton. And as they're kind of right in that last couple inches and right at the surface of the water, that empty shuck, which is, has a lot of translucency to it, is sitting just below the surface of the water as that mayfly is, as its wings are coming out, as it's kind of crawling out of that. And so you've got, the majority of the mayfly sitting on the surface with that shuck, that translucent shuck, usually a tan, it depends on the species of the bug, but it's usually a tannish brown, or a little olive to it sitting just below the surface. And that's a really vulnerable time for a mayfly. It must be a very stressful time in their life because they are essentially, stuck between the subsurface and the surface as their wings are drying. And so obviously trout key in on that a lot because one, they can see it because it's breaking they can see it really well because of how it is breaking the surface, but they also know that that bug isn't going to be able to fly away really quickly, right? Because it's essentially just, yes. So that is, especially for the green drakes, one of my favorites to fish. And then with the spinners, I actually like to fish kind of a little bit on the smaller side of things. And I like to have something that kind of looks like a trailing shuck. So the spinner of the mayfly or of the green drake is the coffin fly. So it's this white, semi-translucent body. And so there are some great patterns in the feathered hook that have it's kind of essentially tied similarly to something that would have a trailing shuck, but usually tied on a little bit of a different hook. And it kind of can look like an egg-laying female because of how that will hang under the surface. Or, you can put some floating on it and it lays on the surface like a spent spinner. So
super cool.
Yeah, those are typically my favorite patterns.
And working backwards to March Browns and Random Caddis and all that, can you give us your top confidence patterns on those guys?
Yeah. This is so what's tough about being a comp angler is all the flies I fish are usually my own, right? Patterns that I tie that are mine. And so I fish a lot of CDC. Most of my dry flies are CDC. That is an exception with the March Brown. And there is a great pattern in the feathered hook that my favorite March Brown, it's actually my favorite dry fly, period. So it's a long body, kind of quill body. And the hackle is CDL. So we use the CDL quite a bit. Sorry, I thought I had some laying beside me. But it's this really, long fibered. We use it for tailing material quite a bit, but it's softer than a lot of other hackle. It's not as stiff and it's very, very long. And so it's just a really, it's a big, big bug. And again, I can share a picture of it. And Todd Johnson at the Feathered Hook ties them for the Feathered Hook, and they are just one of my favorite flies because they're huge and they're bigger. The hackle is bigger than the bug than the bug itself. Yeah, but one of my favorite things about it is it's like the March Brown. I feel like is we're talking about like prospecting with dry flies and how trout won't necessarily on Penns Creek just come up and eat if they're not already rising. One exception to that would be the green drakes and the March Brown, especially the March Browns. It's like the first big bug that they're seeing.
Looking for them.
And they're around for so long. And so casting this big hackled fly can be really, really effective if you just want to go out and do some dry fly fishing. And another thing to remember with it is for, letting it sink and swing at the end of your drift. Sometimes is just some of the best grabs I've had on Penns Creek with that fly in particular.
So, all right, I'm doing a drift. It goes past me, and most dry fly anglers are doing everything they can to get their flies to float like a cork. And you're
Yeah.
saying, well, drag it through the water. How do you get it to sink?
Yeah. So, at the end of your drift, I would even throw in a little upstream mend, drop your
Yeah,
rod tip, point it right at your fly, and follow it down until it gets below you. So just let it. And what's nice about it being that big sparse hackle is it dries out really easily too. So you can do that over and over again, just with, drying it off just a little bit. But yeah, so just at the very end of your drift and twitching it, animating your fly a little bit can really do that as well. And so just throw in that upstream mend, drop your rod tip, keep it pointed right at that fly and let the fly sink and just follow the end of your fly line. Maybe every now and then throwing in a little bit of an upstream mend,
yeah,
slow the swing down. And, there's quite a few different things happening. They're not necessarily always eating that as an emerging March brown, but it's that, it's a big bug and it's trout logic. Okay. Isn't this the most frustrating thing? You could be, casting the most realistic pattern, wonderful drift to a rising fish. And it's like, nah, I'm not going to touch it. Right. Not enough.
yeah.
But the second it starts sinking and swinging unnaturally across the water column is like, oh my God, I've got to have it. It's like trout logic.
It just triggers them.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that crazy? You handed me one of those flies in the shop. We were in there one morning and I was talking to you and I said, well, we're really not doing very well. Try this. You handed us one of those great, it looks like a Borcher fly, the old fashioned pattern.
Yeah.
Oh, I still got them in my box and
Yeah.
we did well. We ended up catching some fish on that. So
Oh, good.
yeah. So I tell you what, folks, my little tip to all you guys, get there when the guides are there in the morning.
Yeah.
And you bump into people like Tess and Josh Miller and a few other people that hang around some of these iconic fly shops. And Tess is a sweetheart and she'll talk to anybody. So she helped out a poor angler like me that looks like a poorly tied fly. Okay, I'll help this guy. So
Yeah. Well, and I hate the secrets, like the secret keeping in this sport. The ego is the secret keeping. It drives me crazy. Why would I not want the person downriver of me having a good day? You know what I mean? So if you do
yeah.
see me on the river, feel free to ask my fly box is an open book.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so nice. I agree. I really do. Of course, I don't run a fly shop, where you're getting asked every day, where should I fish? I don't quite know what I would do with that question
Hey,
after.
that's the, a fly shop's job is to help you catch fish, right?
Yeah,
So they should absolutely give you that information happily. Yeah.
it varies. I have
Yeah.
found
That is,
it varies.
I also tend to avoid fly shops. So I get
Do
it.
you really?
Yeah.
Huh. So interesting. You said in your bio, go back to this bio, that entomology is the foundation of our sport and our knowledge and appreciation of that is seemingly becoming more absent. Do you think that people because I noticed you didn't use a single Latin term for the last 20
Mhm.
minutes. And I'm kind of glad about that because that's what it was like, I don't know, in the 90s when I was fishing up in Michigan. It feels like someone swallowed a Latin dictionary and it just felt very prideful to me. Oh,
Yes.
I can talk about hexagenia and lumbata. So
Mhm.
what? You know? But what do you think about all that entomology?
Okay. So I'm going to quote, this is a Jonas quote here. The trout don't know the Latin name of the bug. And unfortunately for me, right, because I do love, like, I know how overwhelming the bugs can be, right? And I don't
Yeah.
want people to get bogged down in that. But it is also the most important thing of what we do, right? This is, and I have people say to me all the time, do you know this bug? Or do you know this fly? Sorry, do you know this fly? And it's some guy's name, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have no, I don't know.
No.
Can I see it?
Yeah.
And so they'll show it to me. I'm like, oh, great. Well, that's a variation of a
Yeah.
wall worm or whatever, and it's like, but do you know what that is? Right. And so it's showing people like, oh, let's go take this fly and find it in the river, right? Or what this is trying to represent. And,
Ooh. Yeah.
a very, you know, like Penns Creek is just a very, bugs matter there, right? We always say, is it the drift? Is it the bug? Like, it's the drift, right? But Penns Creek, it can definitely be so many places. It can absolutely be the bug too. And I just, the more that we call flies the thing that they're not instead of the thing that they are, the more, disconnected we as anglers are becoming from the entomology, which is the thing that connects us to the trout in the first place. So, no, do we need to know the Latin name of X, Y, and Z? No, of course not. But we should absolutely understand what it is, the life cycle, how trout feed on them, how to identify them in the river. And not even necessarily, gosh, if we even just do it, this is a stonefly, this is a mayfly, this is a caddisfly,
Start
and
there.
build out from there, right? Like, we
Yeah.
don't need to overcomplicate it. And just so keeping it simple, but understanding, what our flies are supposed to be mimicking is what is going to help us catch more fish. And so I try to, people are like, what are your favorite fly? I try to say, well, I like this because it is this, and this is how I fish it, right? And so that's why any flies that you will see by me are typically called the insect that they are representing.
Okay, with your twist. Well, do you find that, I'll call it, the local ties can matter? Like, I can show up, for instance, some people tie their Waltz worms really thin.
Mm-hmm.
And other people, and with not a lot of fur fuzzing off of them, tight and thin. Other people like them a little fatter, and I call that sort of that local knowledge. What's working in this creek better? I mean, how much does that matter?
I think it absolutely does. And I'm a big fan of making my bugs look buggy, right? Like, you're talking to a comp angler that doesn't use perdigons.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Right? They sink, they don't, they sink well. And, I would probably be a better comp angler if I fished perdigons, but I just, again, it's what connects us, right? So making our flies look buggier. Yes, the sink rate is super important when we're nymphing, but, I feel like there's two parts to that. Yes, the local knowledge is super important. And I tie different variations of, like, a Waltz worm, for instance, in slightly different colors. And because I know on this river, they're a little bit greener, this, specific species, right? Because there's so many. And so that absolutely can matter. But at the same time, sometimes coming to a river you've never been to with your bugs that are different, can also be a good thing, right? Because
those crowds, yeah.
Yes. And just, it comes back to fishing your confidence, right? Confidence catches fish. Just kind of even the most basic understanding of the entomology of the river you're fishing, which you can learn the second you step into the river, right? Step into the river, sit down on the bank, look at the trees, look at the water, flip over some rocks, find a space in the water where you can see. Sometimes, one of my favorite spots down at Ingleby is this long pool. And I love to sit at the bottom of it when the water is clear and just stand maybe in knee-deep water, because you can look down and see all of the bugs in the water column.
You can see them.
It is the coolest thing. You can watch
Really?
them actively hatching in the last couple inches. Like, I've got, and I've got some cool videos I can share, right? You
That
can
would be
sit on
cool.
the bank and watch how some of these bugs, kind of undulate, in the water as they kind of swim upstream in between rocks. Like, it's just, observation is so, so important. So just understanding, it from the most basic sense, which you can do by observing the river when you get there. You can also do it by walking into a fly shop, right?
Yeah.
And talking to them about what's going on. That is always a good place to
But
start.
it helps, I would think, to actually observe that firsthand, because now, like what you were saying earlier, connecting it in my mind. This bug imitates this thing I'm seeing in the water. I'm not just throwing some pattern the guy told me to throw. I don't know why.
Absolutely.
Here's Brian Oakland, founder of Got Fishing.
There's really no reason for an angler not to use Got Fishing when everything we do for you is free. We have the best trips around the world. We only work with the best outfitters, and we're definitely going to get you the best deal and the best dates guaranteed. That's why we have clients come back time and time again. We have Don with us on this trip. This has been his 6th fishing adventure with Got Fishing, and I think if you asked him, it is because of all the little things. We don't tell people, we ask questions. What is it that you're looking for? What would be most important to you? Who's coming with you? What's your experience level? And really, at the end of the day, what is the most important aspect of this experience that you're looking to take home? And then from there, we just marry them up with some of the best lodges, let them take a look at 2 or 3 different options, and pick what's going to be best for them.
Well, there you have it, folks. A pretty good case for choosing Got Fishing for your next big adventure. So what are you waiting for? Give Brian a shout or visit gotfishing.com. I first came across liquid fly dip floatants years ago when guides were mixing their own brews with lighter fluid and mucilin wax. It worked, but you had to wonder, what's it doing to the river? Recently, I tried some store-bought brands. One left a white crust on my fly, another left an oil slick in the water. Not good. No way I'm using that stuff. Then I found High and Dry, and let me tell you, this stuff is a game changer. It's built by scientists who actually fly fish, and it shows. Your fly floats like a cork, looks natural, and it's 100% environmentally friendly. No film, no gunk, no gilt. And their floatants work in any condition, from blazing heat to freezing cold. In my opinion, these are the best performing, most innovative floatants on the market today, hands down. So check out the full lineup of liquid floatants, line dressings, and cider waxes at highanddryfishingproducts.com. Your fly and the fish will thank you.
So how would you rank color, size, and shape in your fly patterns?
Yeah. Okay. So size and shape, color last for sure, but size and shape being the first. And then it depends on, are we dry fly fishing or are we nymphing? Because I feel like those can go back and forth. Would I say shape first or size first? That's a tough one. I feel like size and shape are kind of almost similar. Yeah. I would say probably shape then size.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, but I would think on Penn's Creek, where they're so selective, that the size would be that's so interesting.
So I would say like shape first, then size second. Because think about, okay, let's say I find a trout rising, right? And I'm getting great drifts over them. I know it's great. I know they're great drifts. I can see the bug that they're eating, right? The first thing that I do, I know I'm fishing the right species, right? Let's say it's a Henderson, right? I'll size down. But on Penn's Creek, sometimes I'll size up, because what if they're just eating the females? So messing around with the size can be really important because of the variation of what is in the water. Gosh, there was one day, I feel like this was years and years ago, Matt Kowalczyk, the head guy of the Feather Hook, we had a group trip together, and it got like really tough. And we had met for lunch, and it was like, man, it's like they went from eating a size 16 BWO subsurface to now they will only touch a size 18. Yeah. Just
isn't that crazy? But it can be like that on Penn's
Creek being Penn's Creek,
Wow.
So yeah. So I would say don't be afraid to mess around with the size of your flies, either by going smaller or bigger.
It sounds like I have to have a shopping cart full of flies towing behind me here. Until you get really dialed in, I feel like I bring way too much stuff to a stream until I finally figure out, like if I go smallmouth fishing in my neighborhood or within a couple of miles here, I bring just a very small selection because I'm out there doing it all the time.
Totally.
But if you go to a new place, it's like, I'm not sure, I got different sizes, everything.
Yeah. And that's why having your confidence patterns, I feel like you go through like okay, I don't have enough flies. And then you're like, oh my God, I have so many flies. And now it's like, I've got it pretty dialed, but the thing about Penn's, I carry more flies on a day on Penn's Creek than I do anywhere else, because it is the place where like that can so matter, and not having the right size of the right thing can really matter.
Tess, how do you, going back to something we were talking about earlier, when there are a zillion granums on the water or green drakes, how do you distinguish your fly so that, there's literally 100 of them in a square yard of water? Why are they going to take your fly?
Observation, right? Observation, accurate casting. If there's a fish feeding on a specific line, if you just watch them for a little bit, you can typically see the pattern that they're eating, right? Maybe they'll move a little bit to the right. Maybe it's a bigger fish in a tiny little pool, and it's kind of doing a lap, what you can observe is really neat. And so sometimes it's like, I've seen, well, that fish will only eat a fly that's got a little bit of movement to it. And so, animating your fly a little bit can make the difference, but that's, that observing and then an accurate cast. Make sure you're giving that fish time to watch the fly, right? Like we want to make sure we're landing our flies a couple of feet above the fish,
okay.
Right? Setting it up so you've got a good drift, not overcasting, not undercasting, but maybe your first cast is undercasted because you want to see what little micro currents are in that area, right? Like my first cast, I like to usually put a little bit short. If I'm targeting like a really nice fish, I'd like to, I kind of like to see what that drift is going to do before I put my fly over there.
So you cast behind the fish?
No, maybe just like I'll cast short of the fish.
Oh, okay. I see. Like
Yeah.
3 feet away from her or something, just to
Yeah.
see.
Or, if I'm out with a client and we're working a fish, it's like, I always want that first cast to be short because I never want it to be over. Right.
Yeah.
And I want to see what that drift is going to do. And if it's only just a couple inches short, I want that fish to move to us to eat it. Right. So I just always am very cautious because of how particular and these fish can be. I always like to err on the side of caution and, start short and then work out to that fish.
Tess, take us through your mindset and your process when you're approaching a stream on your own, whether competition or just for fun.
Yeah, it's reading the water, right? And Penns Creek is a really great place to work on reading the water. When we're thinking about it from a competition mindset, if I've got this section of water, I want to be able to catch the most fish out of it. So if I start here and I catch a fish there, is that going to spook a fish that's, perhaps a little bit downstream or, closer to me? So it's thinking about it in a way of, well, what happens if I catch a fish here and I have to fight it here? What's that going to do to the rest of the water around me? And so, it's again, like the goals of my day, right? Am I going out to catch the most fish or do I just want to wait for a fish to rise? But if I'm going out to catch the most fish,
which is competition angling, right?
Yes.
It's numbers.
Yep. And then, it really comes down to reading the water. And so I will absolutely, that's a big part of what we do when we're competing is walking our beats and looking at, and understanding how many fish, could be in a certain area, and kind of the best way to approach it from a time management perspective. So just, I see all the time, whether it's somebody sees a fish rise or, you're going into a nice run to nymph, I typically find that they will just run kind of right in and walk over where some of the best fish can be laying. And so just taking your time and, really watching the currents and looking for anything that's a little bit deeper than everything else around it. Is there a rock there? Is there a drop off? Is the current a little bit slower in this place than in this place? And just always starting super close to your, to the bank and just working your way out, right? There's no need to go immediately fish the best water in that run, because sometimes, on Penns Creek, when it's highly pressured and the flows are low, sometimes those fish move into the really marginal water. And sometimes they move into the marginal water because of, their water temperature, and they're looking for that sun to warm them up a little bit, or it's specifically what they're eating. So just, sometimes your best fish can be right under your feet.
What's marginal water?
Like shallower stuff on the bank, for instance,
okay.
Or, if you've got a really deep, nice, heavy run, but then off to the side, there's just a little bit of a drop off, sometimes those sneaky little pools where, the surface looks the same, like you don't really see a lot of change in the speed of the water, but, there's just a little bit of green there, a little depression, those are usually really, nice places that hold quite a few fish or a really nice fish.
Funny, if you look behind you, you're like walking by stuff, it's behind you. You know what I mean? And like I caught the biggest fish I caught. I was up in the Yampa River in Colorado once, and we caught a lot of, 12, 14-inch fish. Then ended up catching this nice 18-incher, and it was in like 9 inches of water behind me. But it's just a little depression. I just took one cast in there, boom.
Yeah.
And got the nicest fish of the weekend. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's a thing I will say about Penns Creek is, if you're looking at, especially like a really nice, big, heavy pocket water, and depending on the time of year, people are like, I would never have fished that because it's just like big ripping water, white water. But think about, rocks, right? Substrate. When there are these, that's one of the things that makes Penns Creek so great is, we've got these huge boulders and rocks everywhere. So fish can happily live in all water types, right? So in that deep, really fast white water, there's so many places for them. That's how the hydrology works around the rocks. So many places for those fish to live and to actively feed where they don't have to, work very hard. Now, getting your flies to them is the hard part, but just knowing that, especially, some of, like our really strong rock clinger bugs, like sulfurs, for instance, fish know, that they're going to hatch off of these very specific water types, and they will move up into that more oxygenated, heavier water and riffles, and key in on that type of thing. So
know that about a hatch, like the sulfurs are going to be found in riffly water.
Yeah. And fish need oxygenated water. They need good habitat. So, as the season moves on and you're into, the middle of May, just focusing your efforts on some of those water types that you wouldn't normally fish can be really important.
Do you get the thermometer out on a regular basis?
Numerous times a day.
Numerous times a day.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm always temping the water for the health and safety of the fish, obviously, because the second it gets just, 68 degrees, like we're going somewhere else. Right. But also knowing what the water temperature is can inform how and where you're fishing. Right. So fish have, feeding windows where they're like metabolically the happiest. And, it's like, when we get really hot, we don't want to eat, our appetite decreases. Right. And so, if you've got a really cold morning, right, and you temp the water and it's, say you're fishing and you're just like, man, it's tough right now. Well, why could that be? Right. Is it the sun angle? Is it, okay, well, last night was a really, really cold snap. So, you temp the water and it ends up being like, 48 degrees. Right. So focusing on, water that is going to, the deeper the water, the longer it takes to change temperature, right? So in the winter when it's cold, those fish are typically going to be, looking for that more stable and happier water temperature, which is, typically between, 55 and 65 degrees is when they're at their happiest kind of, feeding temperatures. And so just, knowing that, if the water is really cold, focusing on some of that deeper water, really slowing your drift down, knowing that those fish aren't going to be happy and actively feeding, and that when they aren't, they get up under those rocks. And so figuring out how to kind of slow your flies down around those areas is important.
How do you slow a fly down?
Yeah, so water temperature is critical to how you fish.
And so say more about slowing your fly down.
Yeah. So just think about like large boulders and how they influence the water, and the water kind of, you essentially, I'm sure you've had people on your podcast before talk about the boundary layer and how the water, around, on the bottom of the river or around rocks isn't moving at all. And trout use that. But, slowing, obviously the water on the surface is going to pretty much be moving quicker than everything below it. And so you want to slow your flies down and stall your flies in areas where those, where the fish are going to be when they're not super active, right? So if they're up under those rocks, if you go to Penns Creek in a drought, and you can sometimes just see these big boulders with trout tails sticking out from underneath.
Really? Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. You're like, no wonder, no wonder nobody's they literally get, underneath those rocks. And so being able to, what's one of the first most critical things about when we're nymphing is the speed of our drift. And so slowing your flies down as quickly as possible and being able to then speed them up or and then slow them down again or kind of drop them in around rocks to make them act more naturally is an important way to fish Penns Creek. Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you slow a fly down? Isn't it just going to get carried along with the current? I'm being a devil's advocate here.
No, for sure. Yeah. It's your cast and your drift and the size of your tippet and the size of your fly and the weight of your flies. So I fish all barbless fly, fish and guide with all barbless flies, and I don't use split shot. Obviously, that's from a competition perspective, we're not allowed to, but I also, and it's something in my teaching that I like to make people really aware of, of our flies and what they are doing subsurface. And sometimes split shot can kind of hamper that in a way. And I fish two flies a lot on Penns Creek. And so it's, whether it's through your cast, it's making a tuck cast per se, which is where you stop your rod tip high, your weighted tungsten flies hit the water first and you kind of track them down. Angle of your leader under your rod tip. Are you leading those flies? Are you vertical? Are you trying to hold them in a pocket behind a rock as best as you can? So I kind of think the best nymph drift starts with it starts with your leader, but then it also starts with an accurate cast and how quickly you can get control of your flies in order to slow them down. So it's messing around with the angle of your rod, how long your tippet is, and the weight of your flies. And it's not always that you can't always just say, well, in this water type, you're going to need this long a tippet with this weight of flies. It's more of like an experiment, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, so interesting. So a thinner tippet is going to slow down because it's not dragging as much, right?
Yeah, so a thinner diameter tippet is going to have a quicker sink rate, right? It's less surface area. And sometimes that means those flies are going to sink too quickly, though. And that can just mean you're just going to sink right down to the bottom and get stuck. So it's like it's like when you feel dialed, and that's such a hard thing to put words to.
Yeah.
But everyone knows what I'm talking about. Sometimes like you go out and you just like, man, I just don't feel dialed for this water type. I'm just not feeling it. So don't be afraid to change, right? If you're not feeling dialed, you don't want to get stuck every drift. You don't want to get hung up every drift. And don't be afraid to influence your flies once they're in the water, right? Lift them up over a rock, drop it back down, put your rod angle upstream a little bit so those flies can come in at a steeper angle. Don't be afraid to move your flies in the water because, currents move bugs around all the time. But it's kind of just, experimenting, right? It's feeling what's under the, what is subsurface and what your flies are doing subsurface, and trying to really understand that relationship of how you move your body and your rod and how that affects your flies.
You said earlier that something like you were out working on something or practicing something. So you've had some top 10 finishes, and all of a sudden now you're numero uno. What did it take, or what did you do to move from a top 10 finish to a number one finish?
That is a really good question. The first answer is a ton of support, right? And an amazing team. So that's the number one answer. The number two answer is in the comp world, you're taking in all of this different information from all over the place. And sometimes you just have to stop listening to it and go, I know how to fish this. I know these venues. I need to trust my body. And it's like athleticism, if you will. It's how my muscle memory. I need to trust it and trust my decision-making process and fish the way that I know how to fish, not go try to do what someone else just did something well. You need to use, trust your intuition, trust your gut. And I feel like that's what I did this time. I was prepared, I was supported, and I trusted my instincts, and I fished the way I know how to fish.
What would you say are some of the biggest mistakes you see anglers making in general, but particularly on Penns Creek?
Yeah, that's a good question. Either fishing too slow or too fast. One, if you're going out, some people just like to go cover water, right? Sometimes it's just fun to go hike and hit a spot here and hit a spot there. But if you want to go just to catch as many fish as you can, which I don't necessarily think we should always be doing as anglers. I don't think that's coming from a comp angler, right? That I think we harp too much on trying to catch the most fish and not enjoying everything else about fly fishing. So I don't want to just say, a good day on the water is just how many fish you catch, because I firmly believe that is not what fly fishing is or should be. But it's moving, slow down, right? Especially if you're on a new river that you don't know well, one that has lots of fish and lots of bugs. Slow down, right? Sometimes, if you're, again, this is like the opposite advice from a comp angler, right? In a lot of situations, it's, really, really think about what your flies are doing in the water and change, right? If you're seeing fish actively feeding and you're not catching fish, or it's the prime, you see bugs, like water temperature is great. If fish are feeding and you are not getting them, slow down, observe, change your flies, change your setup, change your drift, change your presentation. Gosh, I could spend all day in one little section of pocket water on Penns Creek. So I would say slow down would be the first thing. Also, another thing is, trout aren't always actively feeding. So they have feeding windows. And on Penns Creek in the spring, that can be very apparent. You could be fishing somewhere and doing everything right and not catch a single fish. You leave and and come back an hour later, do the exact same thing, and you are catching fish where you just weren't catching fish.
So interesting.
Yeah. So just, knowing that if you're not catching fish, change the water type that you're fishing. Maybe they're in a different water type. Maybe they're more active in a different water type. change your drift, change the speed of your drift, all sorts of different things in talking about the drift stuff, but, just change, but then also observe, right? Take the water temperature, go talk to somebody in a fly shop, see when the best time of day has been, when they've been the most active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I was reading an article a year or two ago that Rosenbauer wrote about trout. The adage is 80% of the time what they're doing is eating underwater, right? So I'm not saying that right. If you get what I'm saying. If they're usually taking nymphs underwater 80% of the time and 20% on surface. But what he said was, no, 80% of the time they're doing nothing.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there.
Yeah, that is definitely, that is one, like I said, like you can see trout tails sticking out from under rocks.
Doing nothing.
When you see that, or like another good example is if you're at like a, let's say a classic spring creek or something, for instance, the tributary to Penns Creek, Pine Creek is a great place to see this because it's crystal clear. You can see a fish just laid up on the bottom of the river, not moving. You could bounce flies off it. Does not matter. That fish is not actively feeding. Do not try to catch that fish. Go for the one that's staged a foot or two above it that you see kind of moving back and forth in the water column, moving up and down, right? Like, trout aren't always eating.
Yeah, not all the time.
Yeah.
Man. Well, Tess, I want to back up and talk a little bit about your life as a guide and a comp angler, just because you told me that when we talked a couple of weeks ago that you never planned to be a fishing guide. So what happened? Because here you are.
Oh, I just can't have casual hobbies, apparently.
I guess.
Yeah. I didn't even know guiding was a job until Jonas asked if I had any interest in doing it. So that is that answer, really. I went to Penn State, and so I worked in the like agricultural world, organic agriculture for quite a while. And there was a point when I decided to be self-employed in that, realm. And that was kind of coincided with Jonas asking me that question because I was fishing a lot and, was friends with Matt, our head guide there. And yeah, I don't know why he, like, I really, I don't know. Jonas definitely, I don't know, saw something in me and was like, oh, yeah, I can ruin her life by making her a trout pop. No, I'm kidding. Okay. I'm totally kidding.
Did you used to have a corporate job?
Yes, essentially, but corporate's not maybe the right word, but yes, I had a real career and I threw it all away to do this.
But you doubled your income, right?
No, I am so much poorer than I was, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
Really?
If I had to go back and make the same decision again, I would absolutely do it. So it was a gradual transition to full-time guide, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
No kidding. And so what got you interested in fly fishing?
So I went to Penn State and I played intramural sports. And so when you obviously then have to take a PE credit, gym credit, and the options were like the walking club. And I already played sports. So I already exercised. I already did all that stuff. And I was like, the kind of everything sounded boring except for fly fishing. So I took the fly fishing courses at Penn State when I was there. And then
who was your teacher?
Bill Belden.
Bill Belden. Okay.
Yeah, he was great. He was really great. And then after I graduated, I stayed in the area because I really loved it there. And I actually, you can really blame all of this on my dog because my dog Poe was Bernese Mountain Dog, and I wanted something to do with him that was less boring than just hiking. Hiking's always just been a little boring to me. And so it was like, oh, remember that fly fishing thing you did in college? You live on Penns Creek. Maybe you should try that again. That's exercising the dog, but is not as boring as hiking. And that's how it happened. That's how I started fishing all the time.
You live on at that point in time, you lived on Penns Creek. You had
I lived in Coburn. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, because Coburn's kind of quiet.
Yeah.
Tess. Yeah. I mean, there's not are there actually people that live in Coburn? You just don't see a lot of people there.
Yeah. And in Coburn proper, it's a rural area, obviously, but we're 25 minutes from State College. So it's a really, Perfect. Penns Valley is a pretty magical place. So full of wonderful people. So yes, people live in Coburn. A lot of them are trout bums, which is a compliment. And then I just can't have casual hobbies. Apparently I became obsessed. So
Did you have a mentor or somebody who kind of showed you the ropes and got you? Obviously, took the class. That must have helped.
Yeah. So I've never been one of those people that, I've never been a YouTube watcher. I'm a terrible millennial. I'm really bad at all that stuff. I, had was dating a guy at the time who was still a good friend, who was a wonderful angler, still is, and he really got me into it. But then it, quickly evolved to, it really is, I would call myself a self-taught angler. I've had
Yeah.
amazing mentors, but like in the beginning, I was absolutely a self-taught angler, and I just went fishing every day. I went fishing by myself with my dog every single day. And I asked questions, and I observed, and I learned through trial and error. And so I have to say, like, the river is your best teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding. Huh. Switching gears, talk about Bozeman. How do you do Bozeman on a budget? Can you?
No.
And fly fish.
Yeah, no, Bozeman is tough. And I actually started coming out here because I was doing some contracted work in my, previous career for the Montana Department of Ag. And so I got a housing stipend. So that's essentially how I started coming out here in the summer, was for that stuff. No, Bozeman on a budget. I am lucky to be here. That is true.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah.
Do you hope what you're doing is inspiring women to take up the sport?
This is a tough question for me because I have a hard time seeing how it would be, because that's just not how I see myself. Does that make sense? I hope it is. I want it to be. I want to make angling, especially at like higher levels, right? Like not just the getting into it, but being more than proficient, being excellent in it. I want to make that more accessible. I want to make that information, that knowledge, that experience safer and more accessible to everyone, and obviously to women, especially, because the competition thing, it's super intimidating. But gosh, when I like went to my first like regional mini competitions, I was blown away by how supportive the people were, and I wouldn't be doing this if they weren't. I was really surprised. And so people always say, oh, you must be so patient to be a guide. And it's like, no, 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 I'm just very, very stubborn. So
Ah,
that is what's pretty much kept me in the competition thing. But this industry and the ego, it's so weird. And I hate that part of it. I hate that there are, people think that there are secrets and all that. And I want to help. If I, you know, if I want people to be inspired in any way, it's just that I want to help them get the information they need to feel empowered to, to trust, their instincts and their skills to go catch fish, right? And to help them build on those.
a couple rapid fire questions to wrap things up here. You ready?
Yeah, sure.
Favorite movie?
Oh gosh. Oh man. Okay. Across the Universe.
Across the Universe.
Yeah.
Favorite song or artist?
Favorite song?
Or artist, yeah.
Oh, okay. The band.
The band.
The band.
Bob Dylan's backup band, the band.
Well,
Is
better
that
off without him, but yes, yes, the band. Yep.
the band? How about that?
Rick Danko and yep, Levon Helm. Yep.
Wow. Dream vacation spot.
Anywhere I can go next, essentially. I really want to go to South America, obviously for the fishing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
When I'm not fishing, you'll find me
With my dog.
with your dog.
Yeah.
Montana or Pennsylvania?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
Just anywhere with my dog. Yeah, anywhere with my dog. Yep.
The best day of your life.
Oh man. Probably catching my first steelhead.
Oh, tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Yes. So this was with my two of my best friends and mentors, and also my bosses out here in Montana, Andy and Lindsay Zoffren, who are kind of like, they've been guides forever, and they're just, they're the type of people you never hear about because they're just doing the work, right? And so they, in the fall, they guide out on the Grand Ronde, and I was out there with them, and actually it was getting dark and it was really cold, and Andy was he was filming my cast because we were working on my casting, and so he's filming me, and I think I'd had a bump earlier that evening, and we're getting into the tail out of the run, and his phone had died earlier. And so he was using my phone to film my casts so we could analyze them later. And he yells out, he's up on the road, and he yells out, he's like, you're gonna get one on your next couple swings here because your phone just died. And the second, like the swing after he said that, I got my first wild steelhead, and I don't have a picture of it, and I will never forget that fish.
Oh my gosh. Well, maybe it's better. It's just etched in your memory, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I've got one more.
Please.
Okay. So this is a world story, actually. My worst nightmare was having Hebgen Reservoir as my last venue at Worlds, because I have a love-hate relationship with it, and it's the one venue that could have blanked me. And so my Andy was the sector judge. So my best friend was there. He was the sector judge on Hebgen. My dad was a controller on Hebgen, volunteering, but he wasn't allowed to do it when I was there. Obviously, it's a little conflict of interest. But my dad was there. My best friend, Marissa, she was there as the deputy sector judge with Andy. My mom and dad were there. My brother and his wife, my sister-in-law, and their kids, and my aunt, who is one of my favorite people in the world.
Wow.
Right? And none of these people fly fish, right? Except for obviously Andy and Marissa, but like my family does not fish, right?
Yeah.
And they're all there at Hebgen for my very last session. And when I'm sorry, like sad, I get like emotional about this, but
that's all right.
When I knew that if I took a 1 or a 2 on Hebgen that I was going to win. And so when I came in, I had a tough, that's a whole story in itself, is that last session. But I didn't blank. I had caught 2 really nice fish, and 2 fish was winning the sessions there. So
2 fish won it. Wow.
Yeah. So I was the last boat in, and my entire family was on the dock. And essentially, they're the ones that told me that I won.
Really? Oh my gosh. That is so exciting. How touching is that? And they all flew in for it. I'm assuming they don't all live. Wow.
No, they and drove, right? So because we've always been a dog family. So we had, dogs and everybody. Yeah, everybody was there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a story.
So I mean, it was just my whole, whole family being there for that was pretty special.
That is neat. Best job, worst job, dream job.
Fly fishing guide.
Best job. Worst job?
Dream job. All of them.
Yeah. Worst job too.
Yep.
Some days.
Some days. Yeah. That is my answer for all of those. Yes. So dream job is what I'm doing. Best job is what I'm doing. Worst job is what I'm doing. I mean, I really, truly mean that. It's
no kidding.
Yeah. As a guide, we get to see people at their best. And it's the best part of my job, is just meeting all of these amazing people and sharing the things that I care about most with them. And that's a really, really special thing. Some days it's really tough, not because of the people. It's never the worst job because of the people, but sometimes it's the weather. No. Yeah.
Freezing.
Yeah. And it's my dream job. So
one thing people might not know about you.
Oof. Hopefully a lot, right? Everybody knows my dog. So that's not it. I was a volunteer firefighter for a very long time.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
That's fast. You ever put on any fires?
Yep. All sorts of pretty awesome stuff. So
Good for you.
Stuff. Yeah. Again, people at their best and their worst.
Yeah. Favorite shore lunch?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. I'm a big fan of, cutting up fresh cheese and crackers and really good fruit and chocolate and ice cold plain LaCroix seltzer.
Really? That's what you bring for your clients, huh?
Yeah. Right. That's what I like at the, just little, it's little charcuterie stuff, right? Like, yeah.
That's great. Okay. Memorable or favorite places to eat at the end of the day around Penns Creek?
Yeah. Well, the easy answer to that is at Secret Stream Farm, which is where our lodge there on Pine Creek, that my mom, you can have her make you dinner, and it is the best food around by far. But also the Elk Creek Cafe in Milheim is awesome.
What's your mom do at the lodge on Pine Creek?
Yeah, so we've got a lodge. So we rent it as an Airbnb, but you can also, do kind of more bed and breakfast or all inclusive. And she, runs it all.
Oh, she does. That was super cool. Well, very
Yeah.
good.
I drug my parents into this industry
You
too.
did. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tess, thank you so much for being on the show. Great job.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you having me. I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. How can people get in touch with you?
Probably through my website and email and social media, Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
Embarrassed to say that, but yes.
There you go. Folks, thank you for listening. We'll be sure to post Tess's contact info in the Destination Angler show notes and some of these, maybe some of these top secret flies she's willing to share.
Absolutely.
And we'll put those out on Facebook and Instagram too. Hey, as always, you can DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shaigh@destinationanglerpodcast.com. If you like the show, please share it with a buddy. As always, our music is by our Brothers Fountain, great little band out of Colorado. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.